think I'm going to take a little bit of a departure from where you've been thinking, but as I was asked to think about some leadership roles, and I think that we all too often get hung up in tactical problems. How many times have you been involved with putting together a budget? How many times have you been involved with putting together a plan, a tactical plan, a long-term plan? Have you ever thought about the time you need to take to think about where's the future going? Do you take time to think about and to squelch all of the noise that's going on and the fast pace that we have to live with in space and think about where are we headed? What do you do with your downtime? So I use this with the people that I work with. All too often, we don't take time to sit and think. This attribute, this capability about what's the end state look like? What are my shareholders thinking of me? Now, that could be a different box, a different product that you're working with, but more importantly, are we really understanding where our customers expect us to be? Do we understand how our customers drive value? Or are we just one level removed? If we don't take time to quietly think about what does great look like, we're going to miss it. You're all going to miss it. I miss it too. It's very, very important that we sit and think about the end. Where are we supposed to be, say, in 2 years? What would great look like? Do you create problem sets that are so difficult but so broad and bold thinking, as our last speaker talked about, that linear thinking won't get you there? How about starting with an end state that says we're going to build a satellite in 5 days or 4 days, or we're going to get a satellite built, a very expensive, not expensive, very capable satellite that may produce a terabit of comms, and we're going to do that in 18 months. Now, most people might pass out. But if you don't start with these bold ideas, we're going to miss it. So I have found through my career, I've been at 7 different companies. Some people would say that that's interesting, why, and all the rest of it. But they've been through space, been with NASA, been with consumer companies, and so on and so forth. The wildest outcomes we have celebrated as teams is when we talked about what great could look like and where should we be in 2 years. When you understand your customers' outcomes, what makes them great, whether it's a business transaction or it's a subsystem that you're working on or walk in their shoes, you will absolutely be focused on the right outcomes versus your own tactical outcomes. So, do you take time in your day, in your week, to be able to block out and quietly go into whatever space that is? Maybe I sometimes go to my office and I listen to some jazz. I do close all the doors. I shut down and I think about, am I working on the right things? Am I leading the organization down the right path? We get wrapped up into missing the big picture. I remember working with one of the government agencies, and I was new to working with this government agency. It's a 3-letter agency, and I used to go and visit, and it started out with his directors in the room, and ultimately it turned out that just he and I and the director of this agency would get together, and we would talk about things. And I kept asking him the question, what should we be doing? And he gave me the sage advice. He says, I already have enough yellow 35 millimeter film boxes from your company. I used to work for Kodak at one time. So I had this mentality that I was pushing to him another solution from Kodak. And he says, I got all that, Carl. That's enough. Help me solve my toughest problems, which was a completely different request than what we were designing, working on, already delivering to him, what he said was, I've got this myriad of other problems, and if you can help me solve those, I'd really appreciate it, along with doing your day job. So what we did was we put a couple of very capable engineers, systems engineers, into his shop, and we listened, and we took that back, and we said, what new system should we be working on to accommodate those set of needs and those set of outcomes? Out of that came more work, more responsibility than we had ever expected, but we were thinking out in front of the problem. So I offer that to understand your customers, understand their business models, and that could be a different organization within your company that you're already working on. Maybe you don't touch the customer ultimately, but when you get involved with these projects, do you really understand the true value of the product you're working on and what would great look like? Do you ask questions about how is it going to be used? When we get this done right and build it in 2 days, or we get the quality of performance out of the shop, or the box works right, what will that enable our customers to do? Oh, it will enable them to bring on more customers. It will enable them to produce power. It will enable them to produce new sets of bandwidth in these new areas that they haven't seen before. If you understand that, then you can be a hell of a lot more productive and aligned with your day job, and you'll feel more rewarded that way. So getting in touch with your customers. And another key aspect, I wanted to go back to the music thing. So I don't listen to AC/DC anymore, and I don't listen to 50 Cent, but I do listen to jazz when I'm in the right spot. You could do this on your bicycle if you're into sports or you're into athletics or something. How do you get yourself organized on what's the true value? And focus on that. What's the value of your time, and where are you using it? And how do you think beyond the current problem you're working on? Get inside your customers' thinking processes. And again, I think that this started with General Electric, GE, and Jack Welch and everything. You think about, you get what you measure, right? The results that you're looking for, are those the measures that you're looking at when you're doing your detail work? Are we measuring the right outcomes? Are we measuring the right products and services? All too often, we're short. We're looking at, did the resistor, did the values come in, did I get the power regulation right on that box that's going to go into this other subsystem? The thing we should be thinking about is, are we measuring the right outcomes? It could be a derivative of that result that you want to look for. It could set you up for understanding and looking for the right leading indicators. Because we're all managing risk. These are trades. The people that are really successful have this ability either to ask themselves questions, or teams to ask themselves questions. Are we really concerned about the right outcomes? Are we working on the right problems? How do we start to look around corners? Are you starting to measure the right values such that you're not caught off guard with the next dropping point? So I think the focus is, you have to make time to do this, though. It doesn't come naturally. The calendars are full. You're expected to go to all these meetings. And sometimes I ask, why would I go to this meeting? There are 42 other people in the meeting. What impact am I going to have there? And I'll opt out. People say, well, you've got to be there. Well, is it going to be a productive meeting? How do you steal time? How do you folks steal time to be able to sit down and just quietly think about where you're all headed? I think it's an extremely important attribute of all of your successes. You have to be able to quiet the world down and think about, what does it look like for me? Where am I going? What do I want to be involved in? Where am I headed? And with that, those will be your guiding principles going forward. And you'll start to look at value, your value creation as an individual, as a teammate, as a company participant, as a stockholder, and your customer's key individual. You start to see all of this come together. You have to make time to do this. So I really think about this. It's a little bit different than what you might have learned in school. In the world of business, I think that we learn these tools on how to solve problems, But then you got to sit back and understand, how's it all going to fit in? All too often, I remember early in my career, I was going right to solving the problem. And I got good at that. I was in all sorts of on-orbit anomalies and getting teams together. Later in life, I learned that I wasn't listening enough, and I wasn't integrating what I was hearing from the customer. I wasn't asking the right questions to make sure that I really understood the end game. Once you understand that end game, walk back. It may be over a chasm. Maybe the solution is so traumatic and so great and so broad, it can't be done linearly. That's why some of these examples that are being made, you have to start to look at the problem completely different. From behind the monitor. Don't look at the monitor. Go behind it and see where the HDMI connector is. So I offer that to you. You have to take time. You have to put quality into your thinking. And I think it will bring you a balance in where you're headed with your careers that will give you a tremendous amount of a sense of accomplishment. You'll be proud of what you're working on. And when you get hooked up with mentors, you can even share some of these ideas with the mentorship that was talked about earlier. But what we're expected to do is to change the way our customers look at us and to deliver new solutions and new outcomes. It could be cost, it could be effectivity, it could be a lot of different things, or it could be a brand new idea. So all of that, I think it's your responsibility to be able to take some time and think about that and question, where is this all going? And then I think you'll get more insight. You could even bounce it off of people that you respect. Maybe it's your direct supervisor, but where is it all headed? Brings us to a partnership and an ownership that all employees own the business. They're committed to the outcome. They're committed to one another as teams, and the outcomes are much broader, richer, and much more rewarding. So with that, thank you very much.